The views and comments expressed on the Space Show by its guests, callers, and listeners belong to them. The Space Show and its hosts serve only as a platform and are not responsible for others' comments or views. All topics discussed on the Space Show are primarily for educational purposes.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they're easy, but because they are hard.
4, 3, 2, 1.
It's the Space Show with Dr. David Livingston, broadcasting for 7 continents, consistently bringing you quality news and interviews with the best and brightest minds in the new space economy. Here is the founder and host of the Space Show, the man who best articulates the vision of space commercial enterprise, Dr. David Livingston.
Good afternoon, listeners. Welcome to our Sunday afternoon California time Space Show program. I'm your host, David Livingston, and it's good to be back live with all of you, and we have a most interesting program that I will talk to you about in just a quick second. A couple of quick announcements. Number one, we're looking at a 60-minute format, but as usual, if we have calls or emails from listeners, we'll certainly extend the program. So the toll-free number that you can call us is 1-866-687-7223, and of course you can always reach us via email, DRSPACE @thespaceshow.com. We do have a full week of programming, and so one of the changes, and it probably won't make a big change for you, the listener, is that for the time being, John Batchelor has moved the pre-record sessions of Hotel Mars to Tuesday afternoon from Wednesday afternoon. This has something to do with his new association with CBS Radio. The fixed time for Hotel Mars has not yet been decided by the higher-ups, but what this means is hopefully we'll get our programs archived a little bit sooner than we have been able to do before. And Jeff Faust is the Hotel Mars guest this week to talk about Senator Nelson taking over the helm of NASA as the NASA administrator, assuming he gets through the Senate confirmation hearing. Dr. Martin Elvis is our returning guest on Tuesday. And then Friday, our friend from Spain is back with us, David Cebolla. He has a new book, which I have read. It's really good, and in many ways it ties in with our discussion today, Space Mining and Manufacturing, Off-World Resources and Revolutionary Engineering Techniques, and that will be on Friday. And Michael Gleason of the Aerospace Corp comes back on with his very interesting and influential space policy paper, and I'll see if I can put that paper up on our blog in advance of the program a week from today. For today, again, we're looking at the 60-minute format, but we will go further. So once again, our toll-free number is 1-866-687-7223. The website newsletter for the coming week is already posted on our website. You'll see it on the upper right side. Remember, everything that we do is archived, and you can easily download from our website or listen right off of our website. Don't forget that we have this Listen Live button upper left on our homepage, and it tells you how to listen to live broadcasts like we're doing now, the archives off of our website, the compressed MP3, and podcasts. So if you have any questions about any of these formats or need some troubleshooting help or something, please email me at drspace@thespaceshow.com. Don't forget, we do still have our Space Show logo-ware store. You get there to the Cafe Press Space Show store. Easiest way is to click on Pepper Listening to the Space Show picture on our website, and that will take you right in to the Cafe Press store. Remember, in addition, the Space Show is a 501c3 nonprofit, and our parent is One Giant Leap Foundation. We are listener-supported, meaning people just like you listening to this program, you support us, and we're able to continue to do these programs. And we certainly appreciate your support. As a nonprofit, if you're a federal taxpayer, you get a tax deduction for your gift. The same is true if you're a California taxpayer. And our parents' website, onegiantleapfoundation.org, is available for you to check out. Or you can email me with any of your questions that you may have. Hold on just a minute. I think, some people said that the archives were not working for today's show, but that appears to be corrected. So, okay, I guess everybody who's listening can hear. Nobody's having difficulty. So thank you, John, for that update, and glad you got the problem resolved. In addition to the individual support that you can do through PayPal, which is at the top of our homepage, or by sending us a check to One Giant Leap Foundation, Box 95, Tiburon, California. We have sponsors, and remember, the sponsors get the banner ads that go across our homepage. And on the longer formatted shows, we read a sponsor message. On the shorter programs like today, we shout out to our great sponsors, Northrop Grumman, the Space Foundation, Astrox, AIAA, Moonwards, Celestis, and the National Space Society. If you are interested in a special sponsorship, please email me at drspace@thespaceshow.com, and I'd be glad to discuss with you our program and the kind of exposure that you get, including exposure on archives, including years later, because all of our archives are accessible and they don't disappear after a few days. So, listeners, I'm very happy to bring to the show for the first time Erasmo Acosta. Erasmo was born in Venezuela. He moved to the United States in 1996 to pursue a software engineering career. He was sponsored by a small Silicon Valley company. He then retired to the Portland, Oregon area in 2020 after 32 successful years in the industry. In 2015, Erasmo got interested in the implications of the Fermi paradox as it relates to the prospect of finding other civilizations in the universe. Further research into futurism, upcoming tech, and the works of American physicist Gerard O'Neill led him to write a novel, K3+, K, and then the number 3+. This is a dystopian novel which explores human migration triggered by economic inequality and climate change to rotating habitats in space. He publishes articles in Predict, a Medium publication. You will find two of his articles that he sent me on the blog that we will be discussing in general today. One is called We Are Doing Space Colonization Wrong. This is from December of 2020. And another one is If We Colonize Space, We'll Need Resources. Here's how we can get them. And this was from October of 2020. Erasmus, welcome to the Space Show. How are you today?
Thank you, David. How are you doing?
Doing well, and glad to have you on board. So you sort of briefly explained transitioning from software engineer expert to space settlement proponent, ISRU proponent. Tell us a little bit more. How did you decide to go from software to space?
Well, science fiction has always been a hobby of mine. I grew up reading Isaac Asimov, Clarke, and many other great science fiction writers. I was also a fan of Star Trek. But in 2015, I came across a video on YouTube entitled The Fermi Paradox, the Dyson Dilemma. And that completely changed my mind. That was kind of a defining moment of my life where many preconceptions were torn apart and new ideas developed. And that was the starting point. And from there, I went into two separate tracks. One is the Fermi paradox. The other are rotating habitats, our topic today. And how can they enable us, based on existing technology, to colonize space?
So before you saw the Fermi paradox video, did you give a lot of thought to extraterrestrial life, to life off of Earth and maybe throughout the solar system? Or was seeing that video what made you start thinking about it?
Actually, I was convinced that the galaxy was teeming with alien civilizations, that we would eventually find them. But as you may know, the Fermi paradox is an idea by Enrico Fermi that we might be the only civilization in the galaxy. And that video was so convincing that it completely changed my mind, and it's not something easy to do. We usually have our convictions, especially if we held those for many, many years. They are very easy. They are very difficult to tear down, and that video did precisely that. So today, based on the Fermi paradox, there is a very real possibility, and again, possibility, that we are the only civilization in this corner of the universe.
That we're the only ones in this corner of the universe. That's what you're saying.
Or the first.
Excuse me?
Or the first.
But that means others are in other parts of the universe.
But yes, that would mean that other civilizations that are flourishing today are so far away that we cannot detect them from Earth yet. Because the light from those civilizations hasn't had time to reach us here on Earth yet.
For you, if we're the only civilization in this area, what does that mean to you? How do you interpret that? I guess it means you're alone, or we're alone. So how significant is that to you?
It puts an incredible responsibility on our shoulders to not destroy ourselves and to continue evolving so we can go to space and spread our legacy throughout the stuff, because basically the galaxy most likely is empty, waiting for us to colonize it. And to be honest, space offers answers to most of our terrestrial predicaments. We just need to think out of the box and go and do it. The only thing that is stopping us right now are our preconceptions.
What about technology? Is that stopping us? And by technology, I'm including the need to resolve a lot of medical problems for people. So is that stopping us, or do you see all of that as roadblocks, either major or minor, along the path?
Funnily enough, I see technology as the smallest of the roadblocks. We do have a technology roadblock, the fact that even with prices going down due to the space race, putting a pound of weight in space is extremely expensive. But other technologies, especially technologies that we need to build rotating habitats in space, basically Gerard O'Neill believed back in the 70s that we already had the technology. So it's been 50 years since then. Technology has evolved, advanced leaps and bounds. So if we had it back in the 70s, we have it even better today. So I would say that most of the technologies that we need are either ready or are almost there.
And that includes dealing with human problems in space, medical as well as psychological?
Here's the thing. Inside a rotating habitat, you have Earth conditions. You have 1G and you have Earth atmosphere. So there are no adaptations that are necessary to the human body because a rotating habitat perfectly simulates the environment that we are accustomed to. Okay, as you know, multicellular life on Earth evolved for 600 million years in 1G. That's Earth's gravity. Every organ in our body, every system is tailored to Earth's gravity. So that's one of the reasons when astronauts go to space that they suffer from so many issues related to gravity. So none of this will be an issue inside a rotating habitat. And a 90-year-old grandma will be as comfortable inside a rotating habitat as living here on Earth. Now, there will be, of course, psychological implications because a rotating habitat will look very different than from Earth. But I speculate that people born in a rotating habitat will find coming to Earth as odd as you and I would find going to live in a rotating habitat.
So this is how you get to colonizing space, or to use more politically correct, accepted language, to have space settlements. Why are we doing it wrong? Because the one paper I have of yours, which is on the blog, December 31st, 2020, we are doing space colonization wrong, but will we listen? So what are we doing wrong?
We are looking, humanity evolved on Earth. Everybody, all of us grew up on Earth. So we imagine the logical next step when we go colonize space is to colonize Mars or the Moon. And these are alien environments that even if we have the proper gravity, which we don't, even if we have the proper atmosphere, which we don't, we'll never have the same Earth gravity on the Moon or on Mars. So based on our preconceptions, because we grew up on Earth, we expect to go out and colonize other celestial bodies. And that's basically what I was talking about.
And so are you saying don't ever try to colonize on the surface, but only stick with rotating bodies in space, like on large O'Neillian colonies? Is that the conclusion that you've come to? Or do you see maybe 100 years from now or 50 years from now an opportunity to settle on a planetary surface?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that eventually planets will become something of a vacation destination that you go and enjoy for a while. As we settle in space and we get accustomed to living in rotating habitats, people will have less of an interest in planets, especially planets that do not have the same environment of gravity and atmosphere that we are accustomed to.
So you think over years Elon Musk will have less of an interest in going to Mars? and Bob Zubrin's Mars people with the Mars Society, they'll give up their dreams to live on an O'Neillian colony instead?
Well, let me put it this way. I cannot tell you what goes through his mind, okay?
Uh-huh.
But here's the thing. Because our bodies are so dependent on 1G, we do not know what the long-term consequences to our health will be of living in partial gravity. Our bodies are extremely complex machines, and who knows what kind of condition, illness, etc., we will develop after a couple of decades living on 0.4G or 0.2G.
You have an interesting question from Todd in San Diego by email. And Todd said, usually a colony, if we look at the history of colonization or settlement, to be more precise, in the ancient world, they had to do something productive. Otherwise, a colony would not be created in location A, B, or C. Even if their labor was subjected to rule by a hostile government, that colony was still doing something that the rulers thought was productive. What possible productive activity is going to take place on a rotating O'Neillian colony to justify its existence as compared to resource utilization, mining, developing rocket fuel, and using water, and lots of other things that would take place on the moon surface, possibly Mars, possibly an asteroid? It seems to me an O'Neillian colony is nothing other than a long-term, indefinite government support program, whereas a colony has a fighting chance to become economically independent somehow down the road. What are your thoughts on this?
I would say that the inner solar system houses virtually unlimited resources. Okay? And those resources are much more plentiful than the resources that you will find on the surface of a planet. I would also argue that if your population starts dying or becomes extremely sick due to the effect of gravity or other effects like in Mars or in the Moon, then your colony is not going to be able to be very effective. But also, we are assuming that our current short-term profit system is going to dominate the move to space, and that might not be the case. And another argument I will make is we have to go to space. Only in space we can allow everybody to have an upper middle class lifestyle because of the amount of resources. We cannot give an upper middle class lifestyle to everybody, 7.7 billion people here on Earth, without completely destroying our environment. So that is the other argument. And finally, what I would say is the argument for having a trillion people population is imagine how many people right now on our current system we leave behind because they never had the possibility to reach their full potential. Look at some of our greatest geniuses in history who rose from poverty. And imagine if you live in a post-scarcity civilization, which is made possible thanks to virtually unlimited resources in space, where everybody has the possibility to reach their full potential. That will lead to new technologies, new materials, and everybody will become a more productive member of society when they don't have to worry about putting food on the table.
This has given rise to another question for you. Kathleen is listening in Austin, Texas, and she says, I can't attest to other countries around the world, but at least what you were talking to, the United States Constitution seems to guarantee that kind of access and opportunity. But, of course, the Constitution is put in place, and the rulers are human, and the voters are human, and the people are human, so nothing ever is as it's supposed to be. Why do you think humans living on an O'Neillian-like space habitat are going to be any better or any more effective or more interested in the utopian ideas that you're putting forth as compared to what they've been able to do with those same utopian ideas here on Earth, which is not much?
Well, here's the thing. I really want to avoid getting into a discussion about about capitalism. Okay, but right now, at least in our country, capitalism works for the top 15, 20% of the people, but doesn't work for the bottom 80% of people. Even before the pandemic, we had 44% of people, and there's an article that I can link to, 44% of people making less than $18,000 a year. And that is a problem when you have that many people in living in poverty despite working over 40 hours a week. That is a problem, okay? And I will just leave it there.
Let me talk over Kathleen for a minute. And Kathleen, if you're still listening, because I held your email for a couple of minutes, I don't know if you're still on or not. Kathleen's not talking about whether this or that particular system works. She's talking about human behavior. So she wants to know why you think that humans on a space colony rotating around the space on an O'Neillian colony are going to behave and do anything different or better with whatever utopian system you have on that O'Neillian colony than humans are doing right here on Earth or with capitalism. It isn't about which system. She wants to know why you think the people ending up in space are going to make utopia come true, whereas people on Earth screw up.
I cannot assure that. Humans will be humans wherever you put them.
Yeah, for sure. So the utopian ideas are subject to humans screwing up, just like great ideas on Earth have variations with the humans trying to make them happen.
Yes, but I think that the one difference is that Earth's resources are not unlimited, are not virtually unlimited like they are in space. In space, we can have access to more resources than we can use, and we don't have to worry about polluting our environment because it's budget.
You have a caller waiting to talk to you, okay? Are you ready for the first call?
Yes.
Hi, caller. Welcome to our program this Sunday. Who are you and where are you, please?
This is Marshall in good old Renfrew, Oklahoma.
Marshall, you sound normal. How are you feeling?
Oh, pretty good. I went out and walked from one end of town to the other and back. That's a half mile.
Good for you. I'm glad your recovery is doing so well. It's good to have you back with us. Go ahead with our guest, please.
Yes. One of the concepts that I got reading about the rotating space stations is that they're just pretty much like apartment buildings. And I was wondering, do you see much difference between living in like New York City, where each apartment building is kind of like a 1G module, and you kind of go from module to module, you go shopping, et cetera, et cetera. I would think it would be very much like a rotating space station would be very much like living in New York City. Do you have a problem with that concept?
Here's the thing. With current technology and materials, we can build a rotating habitat that is a few miles in diameter. And that is about the size of a small island. And again, this constraint is dictated by the maximum tensile strength of today's material. Now, there are theoretical materials that have been conceived that have thousands of times the tensile strength of today's materials. And when we figure a way of manufacture those materials, we will be able to construct rotating habitats the size of a continent, capable of housing possibly populations in the billions of people. But going back to to your question, even with the largest rotating habitats that we can build today, we can have small forests, rivers, lakes inside some of these cylinders. So to answer your question, it will be partly the urban-suburban kind of mix. But you can get into a transport and go 2 cylinders down and find yourself in a nature preserve, for example.
Mm-hmm. And you really don't think there'd be people that would have psychological problems adjusting? Well, personally, I'd have a problem going from my rural setting to living in New York City. But those people that are used to New York City should be able to go up to a space station and feel pretty comfortable, I think.
Yes, you bring a really good point. And here's the thing. We are used to what we are used to. People who are born in an O'Neill cylinder will find Earth odd, just in the same way you and I find an O'Neill cylinder odd.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd also like to get David's opinion on that. Do you really think you could move up to a space station and be comfortable?
So first of all, I'm claustrophobic. But guys, I'm a Westerner. I moved from the west of Oklahoma to the west in the desert in Arizona for years, and I still love it there. And I'm on the West Coast, and I want land and sea and mountains around me. I don't want to live in a tuna fish can. So no, it's not for me. So I'm not going to be one of those, buying a ticket with my Bitcoin to go up there. But I'm also going to be 75 on June 4th, and they're probably not going to want a bunch of geezers up there because I'm not going to propagate the civilization up there and help turn it into a real functioning, working economic settlement, assuming that that's a possibility. So, Marshall, you're asking the wrong person, but no, I like the West. I lived in New York before I went in the Navy. I was in the brokerage business, and I lived at 251 East 3rd Street, and on the 10th floor, and the biggest thrill I had was throwing stuff out the window on people. So, that shows
that's not going to be happy on the space station, that's for sure.
I enjoyed dumping excess spaghetti. That was really one of my favorite past. I shouldn't confess to my delinquency habits as a younger guy, but anyway, no, it would not be for me. But first of all, I'm claustrophobic, so I'm not a great candidate for that. Anyway, so you go take younger people and other people that will call into the show and probably, wouldn't mind going into an apartment house or something like that on the 10th floor or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think the people in New York City might be prime candidates for moving into space. So I'll leave it there.
Well, Marshall,
thank you.
Marshall, your question is being answered because not to be flip about it, people are exiting New York in record numbers because of the pandemic and taxation and other things. Where are they going? So they're not going to environments comparable to New York in high-rises. They're going to Florida. They're going into places where they have houses or at least low-rise density structures. They're not going into any other high-rise, high-density environment. So if that tells you anything about people who are leaving New York and where they're going, maybe you could infer, do they want to, trade New York for, an O'Neillian, type of colony? I would say no, but I think that research is probably pretty insignificant and inconclusive. But look at where they're going and where they're choosing to live, and that might tell you something.
Well, as I said, people in New York City and people who live on submarines seem to be prime candidates. But it's not me, it's not you. It sounds like a very select group of people that will be candidates to go?
Well, I visited subs when I was in the Navy. I was not stationed on one. And they'd be hard for me to, even as I was in my 20s, they would have been pretty hard for me to want to be stationed on one. So,
if I may add something, an O'Neill cylinder is nothing compared to a submarine. Okay, we are talking a few miles in diameter, and these colonies, they have weather systems, they have rain, they have clouds. Okay, so it's nothing compared to a submarine.
No, I understand that. I'm just illustrating the fact that I don't do well in confined spaces. So if I ever got arrested, I'd probably go crazy. So.
Well, I think what they call Oracle, Arizona, where they had the test environment place.
Biosphere.
The Biosphere. I think I could probably take that and do quite well, but that seems to be a little too small. I think it has to be a lot larger.
Well, O'Neill colonies, trust me, I've seen Biosphere are significantly larger than that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, Marshall, I'm glad you're feeling better, and we appreciate your phone call. And,
okay.
And
until next time.
Right, and listeners, if any of you have any comments on kind of the theory that Marshall's putting forth on wanting to live in confined spaces and DC O'Neillian colonies as confined spaces, we'd love to hear from you. So our phone line is clear. It is 866-687-7223, and email is available, drspace@thespaceshow.com. And I think you already have another call, Erasmus. Hang on. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Space Show. And who are you and where are you calling from, please?
Hi, David. This is John Josie in Fremont, California.
Hi, John.
Hey, Erasmo. How you doing?
Hey, John. How's it going?
Great. Good to talk to you again. And
likewise.
So welcome to the show. So you and I are both O'Neillians. The problem, well, it's not a problem. I think it's just the nature of physics is that, it's going to take a while before we can get to building O'Neill-sized colonies. We have to figure out ISRU and all the, 3D manufacturing and robotics and stuff in space to build these things. And I think that there's a case to be made for settling the moon and Mars initially, at least until we figure out the gravity prescription. I think I agree with you that human physiology is probably not going to work, but we just do not know. And I think if Dr. Doug's listening, maybe he can call in. But he and I have had discussions about this, and the idea is, we want space settlement and development to progress. So we have to start. We have to get on the moon. We have to figure out what we need to survive in space and build habitats and biological, ecological support systems and such to prove out that technology that we'll need for O'Neill colonies. And then we can also do experiments on the gravity prescription to see if humans can reproduce in less than one gravity. I suspect that they can't, but I think people are going to get up there and start experimenting and figure it out by doing centrifuge experiments and experimenting on lower animal forms at first. Just ethically, that has to be done.
I think we need at least a decade of testing in partial gravity. to determine what the effects are. Let me give you a very simple example. Sugar. A slightly high sugar content in your blood makes you diabetic, makes you more susceptible to cancer. Okay? So something as major as gravity over decades is bound to have an effect that we haven't foreseen yet. That's it. I interrupted you, David. Please go ahead.
No, you make really good points, and I think we're going to figure this out pretty quickly. And also, there are other people, other companies that are working on rotating habitats, smaller ones. The Gateway Foundation and Orbital Assembly Corporation, for instance, is working on that. And, if they're successful, then we'll have some prototypes in smaller rotating habitats. Musk is going to go to Mars, and he's going to eventually figure it out. Either he can live there or not. And so eventually, we may arrive at a point where, we realize, hey, we can't live on the surface permanently, and we're going to need to build these O'Neill colonies, but they're out in the future. Now, whether we need to go through a dystopian future or not for that, I would make arguments that free enterprise and free markets in space will eventually bring the cost down so the average person can go there. That's a debate that we could have offline, and we don't want to get political. So, that's about all I had.
Erasmus, do you see these rotating colonies, for lack of a better way to describe it, as being government funded and supported or private sector funded and supported?
That's a discussion I'd like to stay away from as well, because I'm an extremely political person, just so you know. I'm just trying to avoid getting deadlocked into a subject where I know most people do not agree with.
Well, but talking about how these big O'Neill stations are going to be developed in the R&D and the funding as to whether it's going to be done through the private sector or public-private partnerships or private sector only is a big part of the reality of doing these kinds of projects.
Okay.
So, most things like going to the moon right now seems to be shaping up as a mixture of public-private partnerships, with some parts being laid off to R&D and development by the private sector, like human landers and some other things, and other parts clearly being done by an international consortium of governments. So, I think it is appropriate. We know how you envision the funding for these rotating giant habitats.
I see two possible tracks. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Either some billionaire is going to realize that there's a lot of money that could be made from space resources in the inner solar system. I'm not talking Mars. I'm talking from Earth down to the sun. Okay? And that person is going to go to space, fund the industry and everything, and then with all that energy and raw materials, he will establish a mega empire, thousands of times bigger than anything that existed on Earth, with its own rules, where people are born and die in indentured servitude. Okay? And that's one way it could go. The other way it could go is a bunch of like-minded people who don't have profits in the back of their mind will go find a way to finance the first steps of the endeavor and start mining asteroids. They will use the precious metals in the asteroids to pay their backers, their funders, and then they will use the least valuable materials like iron and aluminum to start building space infrastructure. So it's really, those are the two ways I see it going. I do not see the government going up to space and taking the risk, especially in the way that the United States has defunded science and research.
Okay. John, any other comments from you?
No. I would just remind people, if they haven't heard, that the High Frontier biography video on Gerald O'Neill is coming up on Saturday, and you can view it for free, but it's only that day. So I can put a link in the blog for people to view that.
Go ahead and do that. Okay, we appreciate that.
Well, Erasmo, thank you so much for a very interesting conversation, and good luck with your book. And,
thank you, John.
We'll be talking down the road.
Thank you, John, for your call.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, bye.
Listener Fremont John has cleared our phone line, and the number is 1-866-687-7223. You have another email that came in during all of that. Barry is in Seattle and says, have you ever presented your ideas? Boy, you're popular. Barry says, have you ever presented your idea at conference before pandemic or to NASA or anybody in Congress or anyone with space policy rule-making capability?
Well, I have to tell you I'm flattered, but these are not my ideas, okay? This is Gerard O'Neill's vision. I think I have made one, maybe two contributions to the vision, but I'm just connecting the dots, okay?
Uh-huh.
And no, I have not had the opportunity to present any of these at a conference, but I definitely would be open to it.
Well, hopefully we can start doing real conferences in the near future, and you will have the opportunity to do that.
Oh, after the pandemic, I'm willing to go anywhere.
You have another phone call already. Let's see who's on board. Hang on. Hi, caller. Welcome to our program today. Who are you? Where are you, please?
This is Tim from Huntsville.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Gerald K. O'Neill's plan for building these large colonies. Oh, well, first off, I want to mention something. Because of the size of the O'Neill colony and the fact that two-thirds of the colony would be on the, I guess, near the ceiling along the wall, is the way the big Type 3 are designed. I would figure that it would be more of a problem for an agoraphobic than a claustrophobic to be in one of those places.
Well, I don't know, and I'm probably too old to give it a try. So
it would be very disorienting, especially if you have a fear of open space.
Well, I don't know, and we're not going to settle this one, Tim. So move on.
All right. Here's my real question, though.
Okay.
Is that Gerald K. O'Neill's plan was to use the resources of space not only to get it from asteroids or off the moon, but also to build everything in space. So what are people doing to get to that point where we can not only just mine the material from space, but manufacture these large structures? What are we doing right now for that?
Absolutely nothing. Okay? And, you just gave me the perfect segue to discuss a little bit how we get materials in the inner solar system. So I don't know if, David, is this a good moment to briefly talk about that, and then if Tim wants, he can ask a follow-up question?
Sure, go ahead, unless Tim has something totally different that he wants to throw into the hopper. Tim, are you okay with that, since you have the phone line for the time being?
Oh, I just had that one question. I mean, I can get off the phone line right now.
All right. Well, if something comes up with something additional he says, feel free to call us back.
Oh, I will.
Thanks, Tim. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, go for it, Erasmo.
Okay. Earlier in the program, I said that the inner solar system has virtually unlimited resources. That means virtually unlimited energy and virtually unlimited raw materials. The energy, of course, comes from the sun. The sun produces in 1 second 500,000 times the total global use of energy of mankind, okay, in 1 second. So just wrap your mind about that. That's why when I said virtually unlimited energy, that's what I'm referring to. But also, the sun is an incredible source of raw materials. The mass of the Earth is about 5,000 quintillion tons, metric tons, and that mass is so huge that it generates our magnetic field. So imagine that mass, thousands of times, in metals, carbon, silicon, and other raw materials. That's what you find in the sun. The sun has thousands of times the entire mass of planet Earth in different elements like iron, carbon, silicon, even gold. The sun has 10.5 billion times the total gold reserves of Earth. So the question you're probably asking is, how do we get to those materials? Now, a couple of things. We know that these are loose atoms swirling around the sun's atmosphere. They are not sunk down to the core of the sun. And there is a concept called star lifting, which is basically extracting heavy elements from the sun using the sun's own power. Now, this is an idea, a concept that has not been anywhere near tested, but it is based on our current understanding of the laws of physics. And it's something that will take at least a century or two to get going. So how do we get the whole thing going? First, we need a foothold in space, and we need some basic space-bound infrastructure. We build this from mining asteroids. With the resources from these asteroids, we are able to build this infrastructure, plus we are able to build mining equipment that we deploy on the planet Mercury. Mercury is the perfect source of resources because it's close to the sun. There is plenty of energy to power our automated mining equipment, and it's also the leftover rocky core of a past planetary collision, meaning that we don't have to dig very deep to get down to those resources. The planet is 70% metals, 30% silicate. Okay? And finally, it has a very low gravity, which makes it ideal for a mass driver. Now, a mass driver is a gigantic catapult like those in aircraft carriers used to launch fighter jets. We can use a mass driver in Mercury to jettison refined ores to wherever it is that we are building our O'Neill cylinders. Something that John Jossi was saying before, that we cannot build an O'Neill cylinder just yet. He is correct, but with the resources of Mercury, we can build thousands, perhaps millions, of these rotating habitats. And finally, the other thing that is attractive about Mercury is that its proximity to the sun makes it ideal to start developing and testing the star lifting infrastructure.
But it's not but such programs are not underway or even talked about, are they?
As I said before, not at all.
So how do you get it going to at least put it on the discussion table?
It's like starting a fire starting a campfire. Okay, you have to start small, and that small start is mining asteroids. But we need to get the vision to the people that can do something with the vision. Right now, how many copies of the High Frontier have been sold? A couple of thousand?
No clue.
In over 50 years? The vast majority of the public have not heard of rotating habitats. Okay? And this is something that does not require, I don't know if you're familiar with the term Clark tech, a technology that is so advanced and so miraculous that looks like magic. We don't need Clark tech in order to build rotating habitats in space. We only need time to do it. And of course, we need to be aware that we can start these kind of megastructures now.
So I'm a bit confused. You're calling for starting to build megastructures now?
No, I'm calling to start building the initial spacefaring infrastructure now.
Okay.
To build a real O'Neill cylinder that is miles in diameter, it's going to take at least a century. So you start with the asteroid, okay? The asteroids maybe they will allow you to build a smaller rotating habitat where you will have scientists and engineers testing some of the technologies that are necessary for bigger habitats, okay? But until we go and deploy a mining operation on Mercury, which has a lot more resources, we will not be able to build a rotating habitat. Furthermore, the first rotating habitat will probably take a century, but once we have the infrastructure, it only takes getting more raw materials to continue building them and faster. So after a couple of centuries, we might be building an entire O'Neill cylinder every 10 or 20 years.
Who knows what will be like 100 years from now, but there's currently a debate in Congress, and I guess there's a debate in the country about a massive infrastructure bill for rebuilding infrastructure in the United States. Are you of the opinion that space infrastructure should be part of infrastructure, or is it something so unique and separate that space infrastructure stands apart from regular infrastructure type of needs?
It definitely should be separate. And, starting the first step of the space-bound infrastructure are so difficult and so expensive that it's going to require probably thousands of rocket launches, plus getting raw materials from space. So possibly this is not an endeavor that a single country could or should start. Perhaps this is an endeavor that requires planetary scale commitment because it's a mega challenge.
Are we emotionally ready for such a huge planetary commitment, in your opinion?
That is a really good question, and the answer is a big no. Now, I'm going to paraphrase Carl Sagan here, and he basically said, mankind will change. Humanity will change. By the time that we are going to settle Mars or the moon, humanity will have changed. And, 40, 50 years later, that after he spoke those words, I still want to believe in them, but they're beginning to sound to me like wishful thinking. So, I have very mixed feelings about that. I want to believe that we can, but all the evidence is telling me that we cannot. Not a really good answer, or the answer you were expecting, I guess.
What could change that, in your opinion?
That would be getting into, social engineering on my part. And I think I'm risking here getting into a territory that is highly contested, but I think that a lot of the problems that we confront today are due to our greed. Okay, we are basically destroying the planet for the sake of profit, and we cannot look in a different direction. We just look straight ahead, making more profits. Doesn't matter if we destroy the environment. And that mentality is, in my opinion, and if anybody challenges, I'm not going to counter-challenge. In my opinion, that is what is stopping us from going to space and founding permanent colonies like the ones we've been talking about.
Okay. Interesting. It's all interesting. You said earlier, we all are familiar with the idea to use resources from the moon to mine an asteroid, to use resources on Mars and in situ resource utilization. But you're talking about pulling resources out of free space, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Well, from asteroids, if you mean.
So how do you, when you say from asteroids, are you still mining the asteroids,
of course,
or is this material that's been ejected from the asteroids and is in free space?
Oh no, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. I meant from mining asteroids.
Okay.
At this point, I cannot tell you if it is cheaper to extract materials from the moon, or to mine asteroids. Okay.
Okay.
The moon is is slightly lower in metals than certain asteroids. Some near-Earth asteroids are just perfect. They have the right amount of precious metals that can be used to fund the operation, and they have also a generous amount of non-so-valuable metals that can be used in construction of the initial space-bound infrastructure.
So the orbiting O'Neillian colony would be able to send, I guess, robots to an asteroid, or send shuttle-like cruisers to an asteroid to go mine it. I'm assuming you don't navigate and move the colony that's rotating. Is that correct?
That is correct. An O'Neill cylinder, something that is a few miles in diameter, is not something that you move. But before you get to an O'Neill cylinder, you have to mine. An O'Neill cylinder is 2 steps ahead of mining asteroids. You have to mine asteroids to build the infrastructure that will allow you to mine the planet Mercury. And mining the planet Mercury is what will allow you to build the first O'Neill cylinder.
Okay. So mining the asteroids is pretty much among the initial steps.
Yes, it's step 0.
This is a kind of an interesting and a different take question. Excuse me. This is from Zach, Z-A-C-K, and he's in Atlanta, and he says, I don't know if you're a movie buff, but there have been, over the last 5 to 8 years, many sci-fi space movies made with sleeper ships, people going to other planets, exoplanets, starting a new civilization, doing this or that. They don't really portray what you're talking about. They always are headed for a destination on another planetary surface someplace to start a new life. Plus, they all show problems on the sleeper ship if people start waking up early or adjusting to realities that didn't exist before they were put to sleep. I'm wondering what your opinion is of science fiction in promoting what you're talking about, and do you think science fiction should be used to promote the type of views that you're talking about?
Science fiction has been an inspiration for a lot of technology, but they not always get it right. They more often get it wrong. And in particular, the sleeper ship, one thing that probably not a lot of people realize is that immortality is a couple of decades away. There's already people, Dr. David Sinclair comes to mind. He is about to test reverting age on a mouse. He's already been able to revert age damage on the optical nerve of a rat. He's been able to revert it. So the next step he's planning to do is to revert aging on the entire animal. So immortality, the ability to live forever in the body that you had when you were in your 20s, is a few decades away. So under that premise, I don't know if you want to sleep on one of those ships or even go on one of those ships, because you can just carry the genetic material and give birth to babies using artificial womb once you arrive at the destination. But the other thing is, science fiction most of the time goes to planets because of our deeply ingrained planetary bias. I do not think eventually we are going to realize that we don't need planets to continue growing. I always use the analogy that Earth is the womb of mankind, and once it gives birth and we become a spacefaring civilization, we will live in rotating habitats, and we will not go back to live on planets. And another thing we should consider is, when you live forever, earthquakes, tsunamis, storms, and all those other kinds of natural disasters become not so fun anymore.
Is that because you're not on Earth, or why is that?
Well, if you live forever, okay,
right.
If you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, for example, waiting for the next earthquake to come across,
okay,
that's basically my point. I mean, if you only live 50 years, every earthquake happens, every major earthquake happens, may not happen in your lifetime. But when you live forever, you are going to experience all those earthquakes and all those natural disasters because you live forever.
Uh-huh. So your odds of experiencing a natural disaster, are you talking about being destroyed in the natural disaster?
You could die in that natural disaster.
So anything that is statistically possible would show up if you lived forever?
Yes. I mean, most likely.
So that means I would win the lotto if I lived forever, assuming you could still buy lottery tickets,
yes,
right?
I would say yes, but I mean, not necessarily. Consider this. Would you win the lotto if you live forever? Because there's going to be more people living forever buying more lottery tickets. So your odds of winning the lottery as you live longer will go down.
Well, that depends on how many numbers there are, because your odds of winning the numbers are based on how often those specific numbers come up. But the pool that might win the lottery with you might significantly reduce your earnings if more and more people are playing.
Exactly, and you make a really good point. The more people there are, the more lottery tickets they will buy. So the more numbers will be playing in the lottery. And
so my winnings will be diminished when my number finally comes up. You have another caller. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, sure. Caller. Welcome to our program today. Who are you and where are you? And we appreciate your call.
This is John in Fort Worth.
Hi, John. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, a lot of things, you're talking about planets. I mean, one thing people need to bear in mind is that this idea has been out there, okay, there's a planet out there and it's kind of nice and has a nice, 19 to 20% oxygen atmosphere, somewhere between 0.9 G and 1.1 G or something like that. But the problem is, if such a thing exists, it's almost going to already have a very developed ecological life system that's alien to us, because that's how the oxygen atmosphere gets created, and so that isn't necessarily that kind of favors your idea of artificial environments in a way, because, if you go into that environment, without plain clothes, so to speak, who knows what happens, right? People are worried about what little microbe on Mars might do. Well, this would be millions and millions of microbes and living things and everything else.
You make a really, really good point, okay? It is possible that there is no other rocky planet in the Milky Way where we can live without terraform, okay? Mm-hmm. On Earth, all the oxygen that we depend on comes from cyanobacteria that developed even before the eukaryote cells that made all of us existed. So it is possible that there are other rocky planets with similar gravity to Earth that have an oxygen atmosphere, but that was produced by microorganisms that are not even based on the same chemistry. They may be carbon-based, but still completely incompatible with us and so on. So, that's a big point. Another thing we should consider is if we find another rocky planet with similar gravity to Earth and even an oxygen atmosphere, deploying human colonies will imply deploying our own microorganisms because we depend on that biome. Okay, yeah. This is the colony of microorganisms that our human bodies and species that we depend on require. Deploying that biome in an alien planet could possibly set the local life for doom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Another problem you have is the whole issue of a little practical. But if you're talking very known physics, nothing exotic type thinking, if we say in our solar system we had a planet, say Venus wasn't the hot hellhole it was, but it was something that had a temperate climate but had the gravity and an atmosphere similar to Earth's, not what it actually has. Imagine the problem of actually sending a space probe there and landing on it. And then taking back off again from the space probe, because unless you had some in situ type way to get your new propellant, you're talking single stage to orbit to get back out of there, basically, or what? You see, it's one thing you have something like the moon or even maybe Mars. It's more doable without much of an atmosphere, but a really thick atmosphere is a major technological challenge, how to land on it and get back off again from a space probe point of view,
Yes, and there is this YouTuber, I forget his name. He has a poster behind him where he hosts his show, and it says gravity wells are for suckers. And the point that you are making really well is, after the Herculean effort that it will take us to free ourselves from Earth's gravity well, are we really going to go imprison ourselves to another gravity well on Mars or Venus or even the moon?
Yeah.
So, and the great thing about living in a rotating habitat is you get the best of both worlds. Inside the cylinder, you get 1 G, so you don't get sick. But outside the cylinder, because the cylinder has virtually no mass or not enough mass to generate a gravity field, outside the cylinder there is 0 G. And in 0 G, you can experiment with new industrial process. There may be possible to create new materials in 0 G that are impossible to create on Earth because it's not easy to simulate 0 G here on Earth. So space-bound industries relying on O'Neill colonies may lead to new technologies and new materials that will move all mankind forward.
Yeah. I thought there was a couple of points I wanted to bring up there in the discussion. I guess I'll clear the line now and see if anybody else wants to get in.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your call.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Listeners, you can give us a call. There is still time today. 1-866-687-7223. I have a note from Randy in Tucson that says, I almost think, but not am 100% sure, that your 1G argument for the O'Neillian colony is not a particularly real argument, because everybody knows you need 1G, and while the gravity prescription is not known, there's always spinning. So even on a planetary surface, some of the habitat can be set up to spin with giant arm centrifuges so that people can tolerate the spinning, and you can accommodate 1G. So whether you need to accommodate 1G 24/7 or 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day, all of that remains to be seen. But if you can manufacture 1G on a planetary surface, it seems to me that you've taken away a huge advantage of the O'Neillian colony.
I suppose so. And what he's talking is, I may have gotten this wrong, but if you have a centrifuge that is tilted at an angle, when you put a person inside that centrifuge that is tilted at an angle and activated it, the gravity stimulated by the centrifuge is added to the gravity of the planet. Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, I read about this a couple of years ago. I don't know if I got it right, but I think
that's what he's saying. Yeah,
I think that's what he's talking about. And that is a good point. And I also think, we continue to have a very deeply ingrained planetary bias. And, if I think people who want to go live on a planet, they should. And those who want to live in a rotating colony in space, they should. That's it.
I have a question for you. Earlier in the show, when you were, actually it was at the beginning, when you were talking about the Fermi paradox and that we might be the only civilization or advanced society or sentient society in this quadrant of the universe, with any others being so far away it doesn't make any difference. We are finding more and more exoplanets that may be habitable. Our research is not conclusive, but the research is advancing. My question is, if we actually discover real intelligence, not molecular life or biological life, but, real sentient life, someplace that's doable in and around Earth, and I'm not sure how I would define doable, but 12 light years away may be doable. Maybe 50 light years away is not doable. But let's assume such life is found and confirmed, and maybe we could get there with AI or robotics, not with the weight of a human being, in 12 years or 20 years, and that's including the round trip. Does that throw a monkey wrench into any of your planning and into any of your thinking if it turns out we are absolutely verified, confirmed, not alone, and we're close enough to where, for many of us, communications could be established within one person's lifetime?
Well, it changes those plans, but it doesn't throw a monkey wrench on them. Let me first say that we can fit more people inside rotating habitats around the sun than on all habitable planets in the Milky Way. Now, if there are aliens 12 light years away, we can get there within decades. And let me go a little deep into this. You probably heard about the Breakthrough Starship program.
That's one, yeah. Uh-huh.
They plan to use lasers on the ground. They need to collimate them. That is a technical challenge. That is one minor technology challenge that they have. They need to collimate those lasers to go out as a single beam and hit a probe the size of a post stamp that is on Earth that will be delivered by a rocket. They are going to deliver like thousands of them at the same time. and these probes are going to be hit by this laser from the ground and accelerated to 20% of light speed, reaching Alpha Centauri within a couple of decades. There is no way to stop at the destination. They're just going to go past Alpha Centauri. But the point is, we have already figured out half the answer of how do we get to the nearby star within decades, okay? And there are other ideas that don't require fuel to stop the probes at Alpha Centauri, at Proxima Centauri, and get into orbit and so on. And we can go into more detail later. But it is actually very, very likely that within a couple of decades, we would be able, within a couple of centuries, we would be able to figure this out. So a civilization anywhere in the galaxy, predating us by only 1 million years or so, would have figured this out a long time ago, and they would have colonized the entire galaxy already. And this is the essence of the Fermi paradox. It is, and because of the paradox, it's very unlikely that if there is another intelligent species in the galaxy, it is very unlikely that they are very nearby because they would have already been here.
Well, what if they don't want to be here, but that they are there?
Well, that is, yes. No, and you make a good point, okay? And all I would say is an intelligent species evolving on a planet would follow the laws of evolution. So going out and expanding will be second nature to them as it is to us. So most likely, because they evolved through natural selection, they will go out and colonize the galaxy. Let's say that not all of them want to colonize the galaxy, but it only takes a small group of individuals that say, okay, you guys stay home, we're going to go out and colonize the galaxy. And because their descendants will inherit their traits, their descendants will also want to colonize the galaxy.
Okay, so
and, I'm sorry. One more thing is,
okay.
It only takes 2 million years to colonize the entire Milky Way without faster than light travel. That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Dave.
How do you colonize the entire Milky Way in 2 million years without FTL? How do you come up with that number? I've not heard that before.
That number comes from, his name is, I'm sorry, give me just a second. Fermi never had the opportunity to write a paper.
Right.
Because he died of cancer. And there was this gentleman who published a paper in 1974 on the Fermi paradox. And everything we know about the Fermi paradox comes from this paper. And his name is... I'm almost there, I'm sorry.
Maybe we can...
Michael Hart. Michael Hart published a paper in 1974 building on the Fermi paradox. So, because Fermi, the account of the Fermi paradox is that he was having lunch with a couple of colleagues, and he posed the question, where are the aliens, and so on, and this kept going, and then 24 years later, Michael Hart publishes his paper, saying that it would take up to 2 million years for a species without faster than light travel to colonize the entire Milky Way. So that comes from Michael Hart.
H-E-R-T?
Yes. And, yes, I can post the link to his paper.
Yeah, I'd love to read it. So if you would do that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, let me get it to you right now. I'm going to mail it to you. So if you want to ask the next follow-up question.
So, I mean, I'm not criticizing your thing. I just simply don't have a clue. But your premise is based upon if there is intelligent life out there, it's going to sort of follow the human model on Earth. And yes, we like to explore, so naturally we go out there and explore. But given that we have zero models, zero information, zero anything for life out there, I have a problem modeling the discovery of life out there based on our model. It could be so totally different that maybe it's been in front of us all this time and we can't even detect it as life. So I think the assumptions we might make would at the very least be pretty questionable until at least we have some real information to deal with. And to my great regret, we don't seem to have that real information. I wish we did.
No, you make a valid point. You absolutely make a valid point. And we only have one example of life. And I really wish we found microbes on Mars and or in the moons of the Jovian planet, in the icy moon of the Jovian planet. So we have more information. But no, your point is absolutely valid because we only have
us.
One.
You have another phone call again. Hi, caller. Welcome to the show today. Who are you and where are you, please?
Hi, this is Doug from Redlands, California.
Hi, Doug.
Hi. I think for those of us who are advocates for lunar or Martian settlement, it is true we have a bias towards planets, but for me, it's because we have a bias towards the availability of ready resources. So if you were to try to create a spinning O'Neillian habitat in equatorial Leo or inclined Leo, you got to launch that through, 9.5 to 10 kilometers per second delta V, which is a huge gravity well, because in those orbits there's practically no resources immediately available. Now, you could go ahead and import those resources from asteroids. You could actually bring asteroids into the Earth-Moon system, but then that in and of itself is going to be quite an operation to get going. Whereas,
yes.
For example, on the Moon, you can have telerobots operated 24/7 by people on Earth, accessing resources on the Moon for use on the Moon that you don't need to launch. You don't need to send it through a gravity well. So the delta V is 0 kilometers per second. It's just at the same gravitational level. So could you imagine that long before settlements are established, spinning O'Neillian settlements established somewhere, that we would already have sizable settlements set up on the Moon and Mars?
Mars is a little bit too far away and doesn't get enough solar energy. The Moon gets plenty of solar energy and has decent raw material, has decent amounts of raw materials. And, you might be right. I wouldn't go to the Moon myself. I would rather send automated mining equipment. But the other thing is the Moon is slightly limited in the types of resources. I don't think they have all the metals like asteroids. Asteroids do have a combination of rare earth metals that we need. They have silicates and they have lots of aluminum and iron. Okay? So it might be a combination of mining the Moon and asteroids to get all the different raw materials that we need to start our initial space infrastructure. And that is the real big obstacle here. Taking the first step for any kind of enterprise is hard. That is probably the hardest step, the first step. Once you're in, subsequent steps are less hard, even easier.
So I personally believe that Starship is likely going to be developed and be successful. And with Starship, it's specifically designed to take people to Mars. I personally don't think Mars is too far away. I think we are going to see people landing on Mars certainly within 20 years, probably less. What I would say is, in terms of the resources, I encourage O'Neillians to be aware of the L-Cross, the NASA's 2009 L-Cross mission and the volatiles that it found, including carbon and nitrogen species in the permanently shadowed crater ice. And also, I have systematically gone through the periodic table to identify what elements are necessary for human survival. And we, from the Apollo rock samples, as well as the 2009 L-Cross mission, we know where all of the necessary elements are on the moon in terms of rocks and the ice. So I would say we probably don't need to have a combination of resources from the moon and asteroids. I think for the moon, all of the resources are there, and we know where to get them in terms of samples.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug.
Erasmo, we're at the 90-minute point. We've ended up doing the full show, and I can't go too much longer, if at all. I just got through with eye surgery, and I have a whole protocol of eye medicine that I have to do, and I timed it today for when the show ends. This is going to be a 5-week ordeal. So, anyway, what have we missed talking about today? And have we forgotten something? Is there something you wanted to bring to our attention? I know we can bring you back to a later show if you would like to continue the discussion. But have we missed anything today that you wanted to be sure we heard from you on?
David, I just want to say it was a privilege for me to be in your show. I would love to do it again. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are 2 tracks. One is the rotating habitats. The other is the Fermi paradox. It's a whole different subject in itself. I actually just published an article early this past week regarding the Fermi paradox, and I would love to discuss that sometime. And that's it.
Can you send me the link to your article, and I'll put it up on our blog as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please do, because it's been interesting talking with you, and who knows what direction we're going to be taking, but it'd be interesting if you could have a conversation with our incoming NASA administrator, Senator Nelson. I wonder what he thinks on some of these issues as we continue to build more basic terrestrial hardware for more conventional space exploration planning, because you're not proposing the conventional, that's for sure.
Yes, and if your listeners have more questions and they post them on the URL for this show, I will be happy to answer them.
Okay. Well, they usually post comments on the blog, and I can make sure you see those comments, and you can reply directly on the blog, or you can also send your reply to me, and I can post it on your behalf.
Fantastic.
And I will look forward to seeing your latest article. How often do you publish these articles? Are they like 1 or 2 a year, or do you publish every couple of months, or what can we expect?
Because I'm retired, I am beginning to do them a little bit more often. So this is probably every couple of months I publish 1 or 2.
And it looks like when I pull down these articles, I can follow you. So that means that as you publish a new article, I'll get it automatically?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make sure I do that. It's been a pleasure meeting you and talking with you. I'll send you the archive information when I get it posted. Hopefully I'll get it up and running tonight, but the summary will probably not be posted until sometime later tomorrow. And I look forward to continuing this discussion with you and seeing where it goes and who picks up on it, and maybe someone in the new administration will pick up on it and have some questions for you. So
thank you so much.
One never knows. So you have a great rest of the weekend, Erasmo, and stay safe and healthy and well, and I look forward to talking to you down the road.
You as well. Bye-bye.
And listeners, Rasmus, I thank you for your calls. Thank you for your email. You too have a great rest of the weekend. As always, keep looking up, because that's where all the action is. If you're standing on the surface of a planet, you want to look up. And everybody, goodbye from Erasmo, goodbye from David, and goodbye from the Space Show.